Purpose Highway is a space for discussions that drive connections toward people's highest purpose to build a better self and a better world. Join me for Season 1, where I start to uncover stories of entrepreneurs and thinkers that are making an impact. I'm your host, Scott Mason, and enjoy today's episode. Hello, everybody. This is Scott Mason back again for another episode of Scott Mason's Purpose Highway. And today I have as a guest, Juan Lopez Fons. I am so excited to have Juan here. Juan, you are a director of videography, a videographer, an editor, and you're the owner of Emotivo Productions, a video production facility that is designed to help business people and individuals really promote themselves. And by all accounts, you do it well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Scott. I'm super excited to be here. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast walking down the Purpose Highway together.
Let's do it.
Juan, we talked a lot before this interview began, and that conversation just got me so stoked because I think the issues that you raise and the story that you have are going to be truly unique for this audience. As we discussed a few minutes ago, when we talk about people connecting to their higher purpose, the stereotypical story arc that is brought to the table is one of someone from an extraordinarily humble background or a background of privation or without, and they somehow manage to overcome multiple obstacles to get to some place of extreme success. Now, you're at that place of success, but that ain't your story arc. Talk to me a little bit about your story arc and how it's different from what I just described.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Mexico. I was actually born in Mexico City. And, I come from what you would say is a, relatively wealthy family, at least at that point it was. And, I really got to experience everything, and I got handed everything, and I was able to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, because I had means, from the outside.
What was that like? And what sorts of things did you like to do?
It was fun. There was one rule in my household, and my mom said, as long as you get good grades, you can do anything you want, and guess what I did? I got straight A's, right? So all straight A's, and I could do really whatever I wanted. So, I didn't have like a weekly stipend or an allowance type of thing, but whenever I really wanted money, I would just ask my mom for money, and then I would just get it, right? So I could go to the movies, I could go to the theme parks, I could go with my friends for lunch or whatever. I had a chauffeur. I had a couple of people that worked in the household, like you would call them maids. I don't like the term maids, but there were two people that worked in my house, and they cooked for us and all of these things. So I did have a very privileged life, and I didn't really get to struggle really a lot or at all. I just got straight A's, and whenever I wanted something, I just extended my hand and money just appeared, and then I could do whatever I want, right? Also my family and I, we traveled a lot over the world. I went to the Caribbean, Hawaii, Europe. By the time I was 12, and in my mind, we were rich or whatever. But of course, I never earned any of that. That was like my grandfather that worked for all of that. But right. I had that experience, So yeah, it was fun. I could do anything I wanted, and that felt and looked great on the outside. But really, I think on the inside, it wasn't that good for me. To be honest, it messed up my understanding of how the world works. I would say, because I just felt entitled. I felt special. I felt I didn't need to really put any effort into anything. Like my first job was at 23. And that was when I was already living in the States after I had finished film school. So I never had a job. I never learned the value of work, the value of money. Like those things just weren't part of my reality,
What would you say to people who are watching or listening and saying, oh, poor little rich boy, I'm supposed to feel for this?
Well, in the end, I'm a person, I'm a human, and I think what I'm going to be telling or sharing with you guys is my kind of human struggle, which I think all of us go. I mean, not everyone goes through the same struggle that I do, but we're all part of the same human team. And I
Hmm.
think if someone
Hmm.
can listen to my perspective and at least try to empathize or at least try it
Hmm.
on, they might be able to relate better with people that come from this background. But also, this background helped informed me in a very unique way and actually to help change a lot of how I relate now to people and how I can understand people as well. So I
Hmm.
would just ask people to maybe keep listening and then maybe see if they can find something that they can relate
Well, after that, I know we're all ears. What
to.
happened?
So I finished high school and I was about 17, 18 at the time, and I was looking for things to do with my life and all of these things. And I mean, like my mom paid for everything. My parents got divorced when I was 7, so it was really more my mom that took care of me and my siblings. And I was, like I said, I had great grades. I was good, great in science, physics, math, all of this stuff. So the natural path that I needed to follow was kind of like engineer type of path, right? Because I need to go get a
Right.
job and make money and blah blah blah. So because I was at that point, I felt like, God's gift to earth and super special and I'm like amazing. I need to go to
Hmm.
the best engineering school in Mexico. And that at that
Hmm.
point was the Tec de Monterrey, which is a school in the northern part of the country. And because of course I am so good and so special and amazing, I wanted to do one of the toughest, undergrads, which
Hmm.
was chemical engineering. And I applied, I got in, and I was then supposed to move to Monterrey and start studying college, and yeah, that was great. I did it, blah blah blah. I left, and when I got there, I was just destroyed, man. Like college was so
Really?
hard, and
Well,
I
like, wow.
yeah, it was
I mean,
not
it
my
sounds to
school.
me hard just even hearing about the course of study that you went in, but
Yes.
like, talk to me a little bit about what that felt like and what ways it was hard and how you processed that
Yeah.
situation.
Well, for me, high school was just a lot of memorization. And I was really
Yeah.
good at that, So I just learned the concepts
Yeah.
and I just, tested and it was super easy. But college isn't like that. And especially the college that I went to wasn't like that. And it was really about hard work and effort strategies and pushing
Mm.
and failing and doing things that I had never done. Like you have to understand,
Mm.
up to this point, I just went like this and money just appeared of the trees and opportunities just
Hmm.
appeared. I never had
Right.
to
Right.
struggle like that. So I started
Wow.
I started freaking out, to be honest, because like it was the first time in my life that I ever failed a subject, that I flunked at something, that I my grades were
Wow.
so low. And all of this pride that I had of like, oh, I'm like this amazing person was just being like confronted, and reality wasn't matching my pride, and I just wasn't cutting it. And so I freaked out, and I started like my grades started plummeting, like I said, and I started getting really afraid. And what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And I just had like a full out blowout. And I remember I called my mom one night and I was crying and telling her like, "Oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is not for me.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
shouldn't be here. I'm an artist, and now I need to insert something." In the end, I'm a filmmaker right nowadays. I'm a
Yes.
videographer. I know I own a video production company. So how did I go from chemical engineering to that? I think when I was also growing up, I did like the arts. I was very much into theater. I was in the debate team. I was in a poetry club. I love movies. I watch movies, all of that. But it was more in the background. I didn't think that I was going to be able to make it because I was on a certain path. I should be going at
Right.
becoming an engineer. So I kind of
Right.
pushed it to the side. But when I got to college and I started doing college and all that, I found theater and I started doing theater workshops in college, and I just fell in love. But so,
Mm.
here's a tricky part, which is it's the honest truth that I'm going to share. And not everyone knows this, but it's just what happened. I sought refuge in theater because what I was
Hmm.
facing in the school was so hard for me, and I was failing so much that it felt like I could hide in the arts. I could hide in theater.
Mm.
The arts
Hmm.
are a little bit more
Hmm.
flexible. You can coast a
Hmm.
little bit more. You can play a little bit more. It's not, sometimes it's not as measurable,
Hmm.
so you can
Hmm.
hide more. So I think I use
Hmm.
the arts for that
Mm.
as an excuse. So when I called
Right.
my mom on the freak out mode and I'm like, I don't know if I should be doing this, she already knew that I was in theater and all of this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? I'm an artist. I think I should totally like not be here anymore and go become an artist. But the caveat here, or the catch, is she was still paying for everything. So if I didn't get her on
Mm.
board, I don't know what I would have done, because I didn't have any skills and I couldn't work, or I didn't feel like I could work. So I'm like, what am I going to do with my life if my mom doesn't come on board?
Yeah.
So I needed
Yeah.
to
Wow.
create a big stitch, and
Wow. How did she react even hearing this?
well, she was scared, I think, and I think that's a very normal mom reaction, because like she's like, of course she doesn't want her son to be struggling and to not be happy, but
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
when she thought of like, well, is my son wants to be an artist? I want to be an actor at the beginning. My son's going to be an actor. Like, what future does he have in that field? So I think she was very concerned. But I mean, I think I did convince her, that this was something that I needed to do and that it was important. And she finally agreed to it. Like, it's like she's my mom, and I think she cares for me, and she wanted to help me out. So she said, okay, if that's not, you don't want to be there anymore, and you think that doing this acting or whatever is what you want to do, then let's go for it. So it was good and bad for me, because yes, now it kind of led me more to my current path, but it was bad in process, because I really just threw out a hissy fit to escape something that I was uncomfortable with, that I was terrified of. And if that wasn't really pushing me or helping me become a better person from the inside out.
How was that transition? Like, how did you face people in your life when you decided then to formally leave your college? Was there an issue with that, or did you just like not come back the next semester?
No.
Or
it was pretty easy, to be honest. I think people knew that I liked theater and all of that stuff, and I was telling people that. All my friends at college knew that, so that wasn't that big of a transition. Then I kind of prepared them. I was there for 4 semesters in college total, and then so by the 4th semester, I was starting to prep people, and eventually I just said, you know what, I'm not coming back. And they're like, okay, well. And all of my friends and everyone that I knew, I mean, they continued and they did what they needed to do, and they all graduated, and that's awesome. And they're having very happy, successful lives. And I just chose a very different path.
Yeah. So then what happened next?
Yeah. So, like I said, I wanted to be an actor, but at the end of my life, like in my mind, and remember, this is the Juan that was very naive and very prideful and stuff like that. I wanted to be like Martin Scorsese, right? Oh, the best director in the world, blah, blah, blah.
Of course.
Yes, of course, because I'm so special and awesome. So where should I go? Or, and of course, Martin Scorsese is from New York City and blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, oh my God, I should go to New York City because it's the best place in the world and blah, blah, blah. So I convinced my mom to pay for my schooling in New York City at a place called New York Film Academy. It's a 1-year filmmaking program at the time. I mean, there's now there's 4-year things with New York Film Academy. But I did the 1 year because I also felt like I was lagging behind because I had already lost 2 years. So I just wanted to do something that was more practical. So I did their 1-year filmmaking course, and it was awesome. And I lived and breathed and sweat film every day, and I met great people and all of that. But at the end of the day, when I was done, I needed to now go into the workforce, right? Now really like produce, because yes, you can coast as an actor, not as an actor, as an artist, like I said.
Right.
But eventually, if you want to be successful, you need to measure, you need to try, you need to fail, you need to plan, you need, all of these things. And I just hadn't done any of those things. So I finished film school. And then I wanted to become a director. And that's when I got confronted with reality, and I started going out into the world, and, it was hard, and I wasn't finding things, and I was jumping from one thing to the next. And, I was very grateful because my brother steered me in the right direction. I have a brother who's 10 years older than me, and he recommended some different types of personal development courses, personal growth things that I should do, because he was in a personal growth path. And I decided to trust him. And I, took it on, and I went on that journey. And
why did he think you needed that?
Because he saw that I was struggling. He saw that I wasn't happy. He saw that, it was just hard. And and I was very confused, and I didn't know what was happening. But I never thought that the problem was me. It always was the
Mm,
outside world. It was always, I didn't have the opportunity or whatever, or I
mhm.
couldn't convince someone to give me an opportunity. Why would they hire me if I didn't have any skills?
Right. So are you saying, or am I understanding or misunderstanding here, that there was a thread between the way that opportunity had been handed to you and your ability to process the rejection or accept that there were certain things that you needed to do that sort of led to this crisis? Or was it something else altogether that I'm missing here?
Well, I just wasn't ready. I would say, like, I just couldn't see it. The problem when you're
Hmm.
prideful is like you think what you think is best, and
Right.
and then and nothing else matters. And then
Yeah.
you're confused. So it's really hard to see reality for what it is. I think purpose is practiced. Purpose doesn't happen just because you wish it. You could have, I think you discover your purpose as you go through the adversity of purpose, of finding your purpose, of life, of pushing, of adversity. And I was not at that point in that moment
Yeah.
back then, so
Yeah.
I just couldn't see
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So your brother recommended that you get involved in a sort of self-reflective
Hmm.
process.
Hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about what that looked like. Was there you decided to trust him? It
Hmm.
sounds like that was a good decision on your part.
Hmm.
Talk to me a little bit about what that process looked like, what happened, and if anything inside you changed and what that change felt like.
Hmm. It was the best journey I have ever been on. To be honest, it was really, I felt like a horse, with blinders like this. And the more that I worked on myself, the more that I discovered things, the more that I had mentors, the more that people helped me. It just felt like this, like the world kind of like opened to me.
Right, right.
And it was just, I mean, I'll just give you one specific example. One of the big, big, big things that I worked on, and it was like goals and goal setting and all of these things, was to become financially independent from my mom. Because
Mm,
she had been my whole provider all my life, and
mm-hmm,
I was
mm-hmm,
dependent on her, really. And
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
didn't really give me a lot of sense of self or self-esteem. And I
Mm.
did a 1 year program with my mom and an agreement. So I came to her and I said, "Okay, mom, I don't want to be dependent on you financially anymore, but I can't do it on myself right now because of all of my baggage that I have over the years, right?"
Yeah.
So I said, "Okay, I'm going to find a job. I'm going to do something. For the first 3 months, you're going to give me 100% of the money that you give me, and I'll work."
Mhm.
Great. Next three
Mhm.
months, you give me 75, and I'll work 25. The next 3 months, 50-50. The next 3 months, 25-75. And after a year, on that last, at the end, then I was able to, she wasn't giving me any more money. She stopped giving me money, and I could produce 100% for myself. And let me tell you, Scott, like that was one of, if not, I would say the biggest win in my life, because for
Mm.
the first time I felt self-reliance. I
What was that
experienced,
like for you?
I, it's so hard to describe, but it feels like I met like a feeling of expansion and an explosion. Like
Mm.
it feels like a self-esteem. I think it was the beginning of the path of joy for me, really.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it was a massive change, because it just completed my whole worldview. It's like, you don't need your mom, you're not dependent on
Mm.
your parents, you don't need anyone really from the outside world. It's all about you. It's all about your skills. It's all about what you can produce, and you can figure it out because you already figured it out. And
Right.
it was so cool. It was like, it just felt like options. Imagine options, 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 options everywhere. It was
You know,
beautiful.
that's amazing. And I love that you express that so vividly and eloquently. I can't help but sort of sit here thinking myself, I associate, and I would love for you to fight back with what you hear on this if you feel
Hmm.
it's appropriate. I personally associate financial independence from any sort of reliance on another person, at least for my livelihood,
Hmm.
absent some, debilitating circumstance that would force me to be dependent on, some
Sure.
sort of charitable or governmental relief. But as long as I'm able bodied and of able mind, I associate that with the very concept of adulthood, of manhood itself.
Hmm.
And one of the things that's interesting to me hearing this is that for me, ever since I was a child, struggling, driving hard to achieve that independence was a goal. And I realized as I was listening to you, that was something I always took for granted. I just think I probably assumed that that was something everyone just automatically struggled for, that they didn't necessarily have to go through a process to achieve what, at least in my little mindset, might have been that marker of independence. Now, once I achieved that independence, with it comes a lot of fear and insecurity. I think that all of us who are not, who don't have wealthy parents that are basically aren't trust fund babies and living on that trust fund, we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, particularly as entrepreneurs. What's your reaction when you hear me say all of those things? Are you ticked off at me?
No, I actually, I love that you have that past. It just, as you were talking, it reminded me of a friend, one of my best friends. When we were kids, his father had a sports store. And in the weekends, we would want to go out or whatever. And he would say, no, I can't because I have to go work with my dad. I'm like, work with your dad? That's so ridiculous. You're like 12, 13. You should be going out with us and having fun. And nowadays, he's one of the most successful people I know. And it's so cool. And I couldn't see it. I just didn't have the ability to see it. But it's such a cool thing and such a cool value set that his father inspired or instilled in him at a young age that helped him now become the man that he is, similar to your story. I think maybe it didn't feel like it when you were growing up, but it certainly set you up to be the man that you are, right now. I think there's a ton of value in that. And yes, I think adulthood, I don't know, manhood, that's a different, I don't know, those are definitions, but I do think financial independence, whether you're a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. I think it does start on self-reliance and the fact that you can take care of yourself. Yeah.
But there's an interesting paradox in your career too, because you, at least in my opinion, and again, dispute me, took it a step further than you needed to, because there could have been indefinite security reliant on the money that your parents brought to you that you could have transitioned to in a career that was extraordinarily stable. So in one way or another, for instance, might have replicated that. Like you could have chosen to be an accountant, or you could have chosen to be an attorney, or have some other sort of you could have worked for the government, some highly stable, dependable source of income that could have enabled you to not have to transition as radically. You went into the arts. And not only that, you went into videography and filmmaking, highly competitive fields, highly variable fields in terms of the reliability of that income. And when you declared independence, you didn't do that half-assed. By making the choice that you did, you chose independence with the whole risk that a roller coaster ride can bring, right? You didn't just hop onto a nice, smooth, one of those people movers in the airport. You chose to go to the top of New York Casino in Las Vegas and say, let me hop on the roller coaster. Am I just crazy here? I mean, that's what I'm seeing and hearing.
No, yes, I think I did choose that. And I haven't had a steady job in 15 years. I've been an independent contractor for 15 years now. And let me tell you, it is quite the roller coaster. And it's quite scary. And there's months I remember where I ate cereal for the whole day and a Subway sandwich. And that's all I could do, And then there's years like, at least this year, for example, I earned the same amount of money this year as last year. And this was a COVID year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I feel very good about that, but yes, the life that that path that I chose is filled with struggle. Not to downplay on anyone that has a steady paycheck and all of that stuff. That's really admirable. And that's awesome, and that takes what it takes. That wasn't my path. But what I have learned about being an independent contractor and being financially independent or financially reliable on myself is that there's a really cool experience when you realize that the harder you work, the more you get. And the less that you work, the less that you get. And that's reality. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's nothing more than that. And that really opens up a lot of options and a lot of possibilities for me. Like I have friends that when all of this COVID thing hit, they were very afraid because like they were tied to their job, and when they lost their job, a bunch of stuff happened, right? And I don't have that experience. When COVID hit, I'm like, well, what can I do to figure it out? And I tried different things, and then I kind of figured it out. So there's an inner freedom that I think comes from the journey that I have taken through also all of the roller coaster of the journey that I've taken. That is very valuable, but it's hard, and there's fear for sure.
Well, I want to go back to something you said because I can personally relate to it so strongly. And I am sure a lot of people listening to this can relate to it from one side or the other. Mm-hmm. And that is the relationship in the entrepreneurial space between your input and the actual output. I worked for many years, more than I would like to admit, considering the fact that I'm only 22 years old. Why, I worked even longer than I was alive in large organizational settings. Mm-hmm. And, I have always had, for whatever reason, a ruthlessly, relentlessly strong work drive. Mm-hmm. And I have also really, everywhere I've gone, put everything that I have into it. And so many times, the relationship between what I got out of it and what I put in, there was no correlation at all. And in fact, that was one of the drivers for leaving large organizational life and moving into the entrepreneurial space. I wanted to get that sense that, if I failed, well, I would fail. I wouldn't necessarily be saved by a boss who happened to like me.
Right.
Or if I succeeded, I wanted that to come back to Scott rather than have, a CEO or an organizational head sort of take the credit. And then the minute they felt the need not to have me around, get rid of me or give someone else the credit. And so I really can understand that relationship to fear, but I also bring that back to the concept of purpose that we talk about and that you've been hinting at over and over again here. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like there's any relationship between the ups and downs and the choice to be on the roller coaster and your sense of purpose? And if so, how has that played out?
I would say there's definite relationship. I think the more adversity that you go through in your life, the easier that it's going to be to find purpose. But I think there's a catch. Not made up adversity. I think.
What do you mean by that?
I think as human beings, we tend to suffer a lot, and we tend to make up stuff, and we live in the past or we live in the future, and we forget about the present, or we blame others, or we blame the world for our circumstances. I think that's a lot of fake adversity or faux adversity. And we can get lost in that and never truly move. That's why I think there could be people that earn, hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever, and they're still not internally satisfied, because they're more lost in that, I don't know, hamster wheel of fake adversity, or I don't know, something like that, or their focus is in places that maybe are not going to help them move forward as much, versus real adversity, which is, you have a plan, you have a destination, you know where you want to go, and then you formulate a plan, and then you execute, and then you fail, because you will always fail first. Actually, most of the time you will fail. And then, right? And then you recalibrate, and then you're like, okay, I failed here. Okay, I need to do this different. Okay, and then you try again, and then you fail, and then you try again, and then you fail, and eventually you might even get to where you wanted. And most of the time, it won't look, and it won't be the same as what you thought up at the beginning. But that type of struggle, that type of the real adversity where you're bumping against day-to-day life and circumstances and reality, I think that really builds someone's purpose and anneals the purpose. Like, it makes it stronger and deeper and like more grounded and rooted in you. And then in the end, it becomes like, it doesn't really matter like whether you get your purpose or not, because your experience of your life is so rich and your day-to-day is so rich. It doesn't really matter if you get the thing or not get the thing.
Yeah. I might have to steal a catchphrase from you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Which is, fake adversity, because I, at earlier phases in my life, have been the king of fake adversity. I would sit and say, well, the universe is just against me. I'm being punished by Providence for no good reason. Or, why me, why me, why me, why me? And that is, I never framed it so succinctly and so pointedly. I have evolved to, and I still every now and then find myself slipping into that default. The difference is that as I've gone on my own journey of self-development and personal growth, I've learned that that's a default that I slide into. And then when I do it, I just catch it and say, Scott, you're in victim talk again. Scott, you're whining, or Scott, you're whatever you're doing that ain't very attractive. And then move into accountability. One thing I found, and I still find, is that happens when I've made a mistake that for whatever personal reason I feel I just can't face. And one of the things that we talked about in our pre-interview correspondence was, and that you explicitly said that you could speak to, was making mistakes. You've touched on this a little bit, but I think it cannot be emphasized enough. Talk to me a little bit around your philosophy on making mistakes and connection to purpose. And do you have any tools or any things that you've learned to deal with that help you when those failures happen to sort of push through them and get to the other side?
I think making mistakes is essential if you want to be successful. And I don't think there's truly a way that you can get to where you want to go if you don't make mistakes. I don't know. The more mistakes that you have in your tally, the more that you know that you're actually on the right path to where you want to go, right? And I can't stress it enough. Like, I have made, mistakes and all of these things. And usually, how would I express this? It's not really about the destination. Like the experience of failing and succeeding and trying and coming up with other options and all of that is a reward in itself. You don't need to get anywhere so that you can be happy. Success, it's interesting, and how I think everyone's definition of success is different. And if you look at my life, if you say, well, am I successful? Yes and no, but depends. Like, if you look at a snapshot of my bank account, you might say, well, you're not maybe the most successful person. Okay, I'll grant you that. But I am successful internally. And that for me, for Juan Ruiz, is the most important thing. That doesn't mean that having a job isn't important. That doesn't mean that financial success and doing things in the outside world is not important. For me, what's important is the inside world. And I'm successful because I experience joy in my day-to-day life. And it's something that I've earned. And it hasn't been easy, and it's been a tough journey, and there's been lots of ups and downs. But I'm very happy with my life. Like, I don't need it to be that different. I don't need to be earning $1 million or $2 million or $10 million to feel better. I'm pretty okay right now.
You should see the look on your face as you say that. You sell it. I mean, I can tell that it's real. And that's a wonderful, extraordinary thing to see in someone. It's actually lit up the screen.
Thanks.
I'm going to pivot briefly, although not completely.
Sure.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about your LinkedIn profile, which we'll talk about at the end of the show, but when I looked it up, I saw that you use the following words to describe your film work. Personal, raw, engaging. Juan, those are strong words. Why did you choose those particular words?
Because I went through my filmmaking to make people feel, to make people connect, to take people on a journey of self and feelings. It doesn't matter what you feel. Sometimes you could feel things that are bad or negative emotions, or sometimes you could feel positive emotions or whatever. But I want you to feel something. And the reason why I think I want that, and even the name of my company, right, Emotivo Productions, which comes from to emote, to feel, is because earlier I've shared with you guys a little bit about my past. One of the side effects of that pride or that way of looking at the world and that really low sense of self-esteem is that I felt very repressed. Like internally, I felt like a flame that was fanning out, that was like stifled and that was like about to like go off, go out. And I didn't know why. I wanted to express, I wanted to feel, I wanted to eat the world, but I just didn't have the emotional capacity to get there. I lost my train of thought because I think, oh, there we go, emotivo, yeah. And that has become one of my, if not, I would say the most important thing in my life, which is to allow myself to feel more. And also by proxy, I would like for people to also feel more. Mm-hmm. In the world, I experience humanity as very afraid, as very angry, as very repressed. I think if I can help in any way would be to allow people that at least for the 2.5 minutes where they're watching a video that I made, for them to feel something and connect to themselves. I think if we actually connected to ourselves and we felt more, the world would be a little better place.
There's one last thread I want to pick up in this conversation. And it's so rich, by the way. So thank you for providing this fertile soil of interesting conversation. You said that, and I'm paraphrasing again, if I got it wrong, let me know. But you said that the entitlement that you felt put you in a position where, and the fact that everything was provided for you, put you in a position where your self-esteem actually was diminished because of that. I live on the Upper West Side of New York City's Manhattan. And for anyone that is familiar with this area, and I know many people aren't, but if you are, or if you ever come to New York City and visit this area, you will see that there are lots and lots of very entitled, diva-ish people walking around, many of whom are provided for by their parents. And those of us who have to deal with the behaviors that are often associated with that may not necessarily understand that connection. It may not occur to me in the moment, right, that someone is just ordering me to get out of the way like I'm their servant, even though I'm not. That they may actually have a low self-esteem. Talk to me a little bit about what sort of reaction this brings out in you, and what might you have to say to someone like me who struggles to feel the full range of compassion for someone like that. Because if there's anything I'm taking from this conversation today, is that my own scope, my own light cone of compassion has been limited. That's a struggle, and that's something I'm going to need to take with me from this conversation going forward. Add to what I need to be, and anyone else who might be beginning a new journey around the way we feel about others we may be encountering in our lives. Add to our little stew here.
If I try on like people that you're describing, that like what you're saying, like I can empathize with that because I was that. It's easier for me to try that on, and sometimes maybe remind myself if I feel like being violent towards them, or thinking bad thoughts about them, or wanting to say something to them. It's like that they're a little kid, that there's a little kid in there that is scared and that has no idea what they're doing, and they're trying their best. And I think we forget, but it's important to see that every human being has a beautiful light inside, and we just have dirty windows on top. Lots and lots of grime. But I think that the more that we work on ourselves, the more that we can express, the more that we feel, the less rules that we have, the more ethics that we build, the more self-esteem that we get. And you clear those windows, those dirty windows, and you let your own light shine more, you will see that on them as well. It will be easier to try them on because they're trying their best as well. They just haven't had the opportunity or the tools, and they might never. but how do you want to be? How do I want to be? How do I want to relate to them? When I put my head down on the pillow, I am the one that knows how I acted that day. I want to know that I was kind, that I was compassionate, that I tried, that I gave them the benefit of the doubt, because that stays in me. I don't know what they think. So yeah, I think that's really important. And I don't know if that answers your question as far as like a suggestion for you or something like that. But I just there's already so much fear in the world. There's already so much like violence in the world. We just try to be, a little bit more compassionate to ourselves first and kind to ourselves first. Why not?
One of the gifts that you've given me in this conversation has been an understanding that there's probably a little bit of grime on my windows that I don't see. And that is an unbelievably powerful way to end this particular journey together down the Purpose Highway. Juan, you've given a lot today. This has been phenomenal. Talk to us a little bit about how we can find out more about you, where we can go to learn about you and your work, and if you have any projects coming up you want to share with us.
So you can always find me at emotivoproductions.com. It's a video production facility in upstate New York, in the Albany, New York, Saratoga Springs area.
How do you spell that, by the way?
Emotivo Productions, Emotivo Productions. I also have a LinkedIn profile. You can find me on LinkedIn under my full name, which is Juan Luis Lopez Fons. And I also have a Facebook profile. I'm not on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that. Those are like the main ways to find me. As far as a project that I'm working on, I'm currently doing a legacy video for my 96-year-old grandma. She passed away last year, but I was privileged enough that I was able to do an interview with her a year and a half ago. So I have a 2.5-hour interview of my grandma. And I'm doing now a 20-minute documentary about her life that I can give as a gift to all of the family. So that's currently what I'm working on. And it's people, people projects. That's what I love to do.
I can tell. And I'm sure your grandma was an extraordinary lady, and
That's
I hope you put some clips up on social media so we can all get to learn a little bit more about her.
For sure. And thank you so much for your time and for the opportunity. I love talking about these type of things, and thank you for the platform. I really appreciate it.
Are you kidding? This has been an extraordinary interview. You brought your full self to it, and I want to thank you on my own behalf, but as well as the behalf of everyone who's going to listen to this, who's going to learn from it and enjoy it. Everybody, this has been a fantastic episode. Give a big shout out to Juan. Look him up, find out more about him. And until the next time, this is Scott Mason signing off of today's episode of The Purpose Highway. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Join our community today at purposehighway.com and subscribe to get notified when new episodes go live. Scott Mason, checking out.